Morning, everybody. Welcome back to the NRG series. I am Mapamonte. We're in Louisville, Kentucky. I think I'm saying that city right. I have been told by locals that I'm doing an okay job with it. So I mean that's pretty good props for me. Let's talk about what we're playing for today in our Pioneer event, because the prizes are a little bit different than yesterday's event, which just completed today, obviously. So $1,200 for first place, 20 points to the winner, a bunch of cash, bunch of points for the rest of those players there. So I wanted to talk about again the players to watch right now. So we're starting to shake out through the standings here, getting a little bit closer to the final tally for points. And you can see Connor, Jesse, and then Zach's down at the bottom there at 0-1. So those three players are competing for our Player of the Year, which we'll get to in a moment. But you see Connor, Jesse, Mac Endress, Will Krueger, and Zoe Riedemann all at 1-0. Raja Suleiman, Adam Wasburn, Moses, and Zach Allen, as I mentioned, down there at 0-1 to start the day. So day not necessarily over, just going to have to win several in a row in order to punch our ticket to the top 8 and gain some more NRG series points. I had mentioned the Player of the Year race, so let's go ahead and take a peek at that. And you can see this graphic here is a pretty good one. You got Zach Allen at 162 points, Jesse Robkin at 156, and Connor at 168. Now that was to start the weekend, I believe. So we can show you an updated point total here, kind of where we're at. So Connor at 173, Zach at 172, and Jesse at 161. Now that's starting this morning. So Jesse has some ground to make up. Connor got to be feeling pretty good about being 1-0, and Zach being at 0-1 with his chances to lock up that number one position. Pretty good stuff. We're going to have that race brought to you all day today, obviously, here, which is, again, going to lead into our qualified players, which are, we're working on some graphic here. So we're going to go ahead and get our qualified players up so we can have that updated for you. Again, Derek Davis, congratulations to him. Just won a pretty awesome finals match against Ross Merriam. So Derek is our newest addition to our championship. We will have one more season 3 at large qualifier, and then 4 more overall at large qualifiers as well, which we will end up with today at the end of the top 8. And we'll keep working on that as we get through the rounds. We'll keep that players to watch board updated for you. Again, make sure to tune into our Twitter if you're looking for specific players as well, some photos and things like that going up. And with that, we're going to jump into round number 2 for, looks like Will Krueger's down there, and he's vying for one of those spots. So I'm going to send you back down to Dom and Joe.
All right, thanks. Here we go. Underway round 2 of Pioneer. Thanks for joining us today as we swap formats over there for the rest of the weekend. And we've got Will Krueger and Richard Nixon, Lotus Field combo versus Atarka Red to kick things off.
Note, this is the kind of deck which is, you would know this better than me. This is meant to be the kind of deck that plays on Lotus Field, right? This kind of blisteringly fast aggro deck. Really, if it's gold fishing, fire on all cylinders, going to be closing the game out faster than the Lotus Field can come off.
Yeah, I mean, Lotus Field is an incredibly good deck, and I think underplayed in the format, at least it was up until a few weeks ago. But Atarka Red, not a matchup you're hoping to face. The Burning-Tree Emissary draws into the Bushwhacker are particularly dangerous, although we do not see that here from Richard Nixon. And Will Krueger with the ideal card in the matchup to open with, which is the Arboreal Grazer, which does a good job of fronting a lot of damage coming in. We are in round 2. You see both players have won round 1 already. And Will Krueger, if things ended now, I believe would earn a spot in the championship. But that is not a guarantee at this point. So looking to improve his standing and has, I believe, won or at least placed fairly high in one of the Magic Online showdowns, I believe, last Sunday with Lotus, a deck that he just recently started playing.
Yeah, he won the Pioneer Challenge with Lotus. Yeah, so a lot of players in that friend group, a lot of the more dialed in, more competitive players on the circuit have all gravitated towards Lotus for this weekend. And so this might be a real kind of breakout weekend for the deck. Not that it needed one. It feels like Lotus has a good weekend, all the time, and then people don't really take it seriously. Maybe this is the weekend where people start taking it seriously. I don't know.
At some point, it has to happen. I keep talking about Lotus every month, and aside from the one event that I played in, no Nerve Rage entrant has registered Lotus Field in the last 3 or 4 months. And yet we have a bundle of them today, I believe 7. in the field. So finally, some people are coming on board here. We'll see if Will Krueger's got what he needs here. He does have the correct lands. Ideal if you're unfamiliar with Pioneer or the Lotus Field deck, you haven't seen it much on camera. The ideal setup is to have Thespian Stage copy Lotus Field so that all of your untap effects generate maximum bonus mana. And with 4 creatures, now granted they're all 1 power for Richard Nixon in play, but they have a habit of growing with prowess. So Will is not necessarily safe to get out of the next turn if he isn't able to win here. And starting with the Sylvan Scrying, not ideal for the combo turn. So we may see him building for a future win.
Yeah, it seems like this is going to be the final setup turn. If Will gets to untap, then decent chance he'll be able to combo off. But getting to untap here against 4 creatures on the other side, including 3 prowess creatures, no guarantee by any means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple spells would be ideal for Richard Nixon, or potentially a creature into a Bushwhacker. Let's see. I believe there is a Bonecrusher Giant in hand. Let's see what the Atarka red deck is able to muster here. Atarka's command itself is also very strong, although we don't have green mana at this point. Will Krueger's got to be happy to see this. As Bonecrusher Shock plus an attack here is going to leave him very much alive heading into this turn.
Are we reaching for those mana markers? Okay, that's just the telltale sign that we're going to try and make something happen. So let's see what we can do.
Blue and black, don't need the red and white until you've sideboarded, so he gets rid of those. And here we go. So pour over the pages to begin with. Nets 1 mana, draw 3, pitch 1. So a producer as well as a draw 3. Will's ideally looking for Ultimatum, Emergent Ultimatum to tutor through the deck and assemble a direct route to a win. So we'll see. I don't see it yet. A couple more of the pages. I mean, you put yourself in good position, but there's no guarantee that he gets out of this.
Yeah, really looking for Emergent Ultimatum for that deterministic kill, or for some of these weird one-offs that you play because of Ultimatum, so Behold the Beyond or Lear and so on. Those can seal the deal, but doesn't look like we have any of those in the rotation just yet.
No, we don't. Plenty of value available as we see 2 Lotus untapped plus a Thespian Stage that is just happening for a colorless at this point. And Will choosing on the impulse. Hand doesn't look exciting. Perhaps the Hidden Strings in there, but I'm not sure there's any other important cards. Dark Petition goes to hand. So if that was a Hidden Strings, Dark Petition plus Hidden Strings does lead to an Ultimatum. As long as you have Spell Mastery, and Will most certainly does at this point.
Yeah, Dark Petition, if we can bring that up, one of those really wonky tutors from Magic Origins. So if you have Spell Mastery, you're paying this hefty sticker price up front, and then you get to recoup triple black on the back end there. So a really nice card for a deck like this, and one of the cards that makes the Emergent Ultimatum piles actually function properly.
Right. So you can see the 3 black added there, and Will tutoring up. You don't have to reveal to your opponent as you are allowed to tutor up any card, but betting money is on that being Ultimatum in hand right there. No, it's Lear. Will went with Lear. Okay. So if you bet on that, if you wagered against me, you won. Lear comes into play. If we can pop up Lear, Disciple of the Damned, I believe. This gives everything in your graveyard, or instants and sorceries in the graveyard flashback, as well as your spells being uncounterable, which isn't relevant here. Disciple of the Drowned, actually.
Yeah, so almost Underworld Breach vibes. We saw a lot of similar effects of this in our modern portion today. And crucially, the flashback is bestowed upon all instants and sorceries that are in your graveyard while you control Lear. So if you control Lear, you play a Hidden Strings, goes to your graveyard, you can immediately flash it back. None of this weird kind of York Must Will style exile clause or anything like that.
Right, excellent point. So Will, still moving through what's left of his graveyard here. One thing he needs to watch out for, although unlikely to get tripped up by, is you can flashback enough cards that when you actually go to cast Dark Petition, you no longer have Spell Mastery. So one minor thing to keep track of. We see another part of the pages here, and this one did find an ultimatum. Which, given that Will navigated his way through a Magic Online showcase, and he's just going to show his hand off here and say, "Hey, I've got this wrapped up."
A real motley crew, yeah. And
Yeah.
this is, I think, one issue with the Atarka red deck is that you have to strike this careful balance between having all of these cheap prowess creatures and actually having enough spells that they represent a serious threat. And in that game, we saw a lot of creatures, not that many spells to stitch together a kill with those. So Will had a decent draw, had Arboreal Grazer, which is both a good accelerant and a good roadblock. Was able to outrace the aggro deck that is hoping to prey on a deck like Lotus Field, but wasn't able to do that just yet.
Right. And even, I mean, this Atarka red deck being favored against Lotus deck, it's not, a slam dunk favorite. It's going to win more often than not, but this is not like an 80-20 matchup. It's just somewhat favored for Atarka red. But we can go ahead and bring up the deck list now and look at what the players are working with. Will Krueger's Lotus Field deck. So we can see a rather new addition to the deck is Hope Tender, which is being played main deck here at 2 copies. This is popularized by Kane Reinhardt's win in the it was the Mox, right, that he won the qualifier for the everything really.
Kane taking their talents to the actual Mox. So Kane's list is I want to say their list is stock-ish at this point, and you see a lot of the distinguishing features of that here. So the main deck Hope Tenders, the main deck Extinction Event, a really nice sweeper that you can bring to bear against a deck like this. You saw that game for 1 mana value creatures there. A card like Extinction Event would have bought a lot of time. And then in the sideboard, we have like Elder Gargaroth that we can bring in. Fading Hope, I imagine, like a decent defensive tool. So it's going to be tougher for Will to break serve on the play, but has a few nice cards to try and do that.
All right. And there's a comments as well. This is a spot where a lot of players are basically transformationally sideboarding out the expensive cards and moving into the creature package to try and fight against lower than round deck.
I don't know if the 9-mana dinosaur is what you need in this kind of matchup, but I know there are a lot of Zakama fans out there, so hopefully
there are.
We might be able to get on the floor and see the dinosaur. I don't know.
All right, let's take a look at Richard Nixon's Atarka red deck and see what he's going to be using to try and get underneath Will Krueger. We see, like you said, a lot of 1-drop creatures. We see Burning-Tree Emissary and Reckless Bushwhacker, which is kind of the combo that you'd love to see on turn 2, and then Atarka's Command, and a new card, Audacity, which is the new version of kind of Rancor, +2 and Trample to a creature. So that can really increase your clock. Out of the sideboard,
a little bit of a heftier green splash for those Audacities and for Lovestruck Beast even in the sideboard, and the ones in the vines. That one I think will be coming in. I don't think any of the rest of these look too appealing. Maybe the Rampaging Ferocidons, you're mixing up your 3-drops a little bit, but I imagine we're going to see basically the same deck post sideboard here.
All right, players have presented. Let's see what happens. Richard Nixon, can he win on the play here? Will Krueger still picking up an opening hand. Lotus deck does mulligan quite often. And we do see here that Will Krueger's on 6 cards. And
there is
Soul-Scar
Mage. Kick things off.
Creature to begin with for Richard. And a Grazer once again for Will Krueger. That's the ideal opening. Okay, Cindervines for Richard Nixon here. So this will, as Will Krueger's going to take a look at this card, let's go ahead and bring it up on the screen. Cindervines, a 2-mana enchantment that will tax Will's spells not with mana, but with life.
Yeah, so kind of Eidolon of the Great Revel, Pyrostatic Pillar vibes going on with this. It is only 1 damage per spell, so one issue with this might be that, you saw Will was able to just soak up damage from the Soul-Scar Mage with that attack. If Will has a high life total heading into the combo turn, he doesn't need to cast 20 spells or 15 spells. Like a few high impact spells can get the job done. So that card not as effective as you would like a lot of the time. And we see here, Nixon follows up with Anax, Hardened in the Forge. So that's going to be a decent attacker next turn, but for now, still no damage coming in via combat. Was going to get to untap at 20 life here.
Yeah, this is really a comfortable spot. I mean, you're unlikely to take 20 in one turn, and being at 20, he can feel free to take his time here, maneuver this however he wants. He can start with cycling Vizvir of Tumbling Sands to generate a mana. Find another Grazer, actually. But another land is also important here. Lotus can win. The Lotus Field deck can win with just a Lotus Field in play, but it is incredibly unlikely. Not something you see very often.
Yeah, that's where these, hardcast Viziers or the Hope Tenders that we saw make their way into the main decks recently. That's where that really comes into play.
All right, so we're trying to determine. He does have Bala Ged Recovery in hand, so that is a land you can play tapped that can be good for a future turn.
So that is, come on, World. What card is that there?
I don't know.
Do us a solid, Will. Play legible cards that we can see as commentators. We got to puzzle this out in real time here.
It's a Supreme Verdict. It's that's the Anax token just came into play there. Yeah, I was trying to think how is Arboreal Grazer not in play anymore? It wasn't I know it wasn't Diabolic Intent. What happened here? But yeah, Supreme Verdict makes sense. This actually increases Richard Nixon's board presence to some degree. At least he's attacking.
Oh, and this actually is this going to be Reckless Bushwhacker as a follow-up?
Well, that would be Well, this is an excellent turn here, boy.
So that's 8, 10, 12 damage coming across, and we mentioned Nixon wasn't able to get on the board in combat so far. That has changed in a big way just now.
Yeah, this is a beating. So Will Krueger drops from 20 down to 7. And remember that Cindervines is still in play.
So there is a follow-up Supreme Verdict for Will. But actually casting that is not trivial here. You can't cast out just off one copy of Lotus Field if your other land is a green source. So
right. Okay, so it is going to be Grazer and Fae of Wishes into play. Now, in a lot of lists, if the Fae of Wishes dies and is exiled, which is possible against these red decks, then Will would no longer be able to win. However, this being a sideboard game, it is likely that he has boarded some of the creature package or potentially all of it. And so this Fae of Wishes is no longer an exclusive win condition. Which is going to be important. Will may need to win with the creature as he is, I believe, going to fall down to, is it 2?
It's low single digits, that's for sure. And so, the usual routes for combering are off the table here. And we're going to go into game 3. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Richard Nixon had the win with Ramunap Ruins. He didn't even need to attack next turn, even if Will could muster a go wide defense, which seemed unlikely, or potentially fire off that Supreme Verdict. So, all right, we're going to game 3. That game looked more like what the Atarka player is hoping for. And now Will Krueger going first obviously is nice. Hoping for a Grazer again into, a follow-up land drop, I guess. I mean, we saw a 6-card hand that time. Lotus is a deck that can certainly reasonably expect to win on 6 or 5 cards a decent amount of the time, but, does make things tougher. And in that case, I think really the shortage was more colored land sources.
Yeah, we're going to see if Will on the play can ideally have Grazer all 3 games. We can get off to a fast start, hope for turn 4 Goldfish, which usually is going to be fast enough. Mm-hmm. That one copy of Cindervines in Nixon's sideboard actually doing some decent work there, but more of a glorified burn spell than an actual kind of combo stopper in that game.
Right. I mean, sometimes in some games it can matter. I mean, get some damage through, and then it can be sacrificed to pick off the Omniscience at a particular point, but potentially the Omniscience no longer in the deck at this point for Will Krueger if he has boarded as a common package. He has presented. Richard Nixon still shuffling. We're going to get things going here in a moment for game number 3. Thanks for being with us in Rage Gaming. Follow if you're enjoying the content. We'll be here all day long with Pioneer action. I'll be with Dom for a couple rounds, and then Mason Clark will replace me for a couple round break. So you can catch him and Dom for a few rounds, and then I'll be back to finish up the event with Mason later this evening. And we are underway for game 3, so let's go back to the table. All right, Will taking advantage of one of the double-sided cards in Bala Ged Recovery to get a land on the board. And someone's scrying to bring forth a Lotus Field, but no Grazer this game.
Yeah, so a clean route via combat if Nixon is able to apply pressure. We'll see what he's trying to do that with. So Burning-Tree Emissary into Reckless Bushwhacker. Okay, that is the 1-2 punch that lets you get a lot of damage in early. So that's going to be 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 damage coming through on the second turn for Nixon. So very nice start for them.
Yeah, excellent. And Will Krueger here, if his turn consists of just Lotus Pass, okay, so defenseless again. Can Richard push through 13 damage this turn? That's ambitious. We'll see what he can line up here.
I think there is a second Reckless Bushwhacker in hand, if I'm seeing it
no,
right. So we start with Audacity. Okay. So that's 4. And there's Bushwhacker. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think this is exactly 13. This is a turn 3 kill.
Well, if it is, Will Krueger's going to be kicking himself a little bit here, as that's not super likely. Let's see. Counting it up.
Doing some
I think you're correct. I think it's 13. Because 1 Bushwhacker is 2, 1 is 3. That's 5. Soul-Scar Mage with Prowess is actually going to be 5. And then Burning-Tree Emissary should be 3. Well, counting this over and over again, trying to, wait a minute. This can't be right.
It's like, wait, I meant to be the first combo deck here? No.
Yeah,
that is.
it.
Okay.
All right.
There we are.
Nixon shows his medal as Atarka Red beats up on Lotus Field combo. And Will Krueger, I mean, what you said, turn 4 should be good most of the time, especially going first. Not in this case, and that's about as fast as it gets at Pioneer.
Yeah, Nixon is the one doing the kicking around in this case, and we will see if we have an interview or a backup match to send you to. But that was fast enough that we got to fill that time somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those Bushwhackers are vicious, coming in for 2 mana, pumping the team, giving haste, and we saw, especially after that. I mean, you Supreme Verdict, you expect at least a 1-turn reprieve, and instead, in game 2, Will Krueger verdicted and then took a dozen or so damage instantaneously. But so let's talk about. So chat's mentioning Audacity and it's a new card in the deck, off the splash color, pushing through a little bit extra damage, giving you a redraw when your creature's killed, and looked okay there. It was effectively 2 points of haste damage for 1 mana there.
Yeah, we've seen it be a big upgrade for the various auras decks, which now are in green primarily for Glade Cover Scout as one of the better creatures, and then Audacity is one of the better auras, but also very nice in a prowess deck that can support it. Getting Soul-Scar Mage or Monastery Swiftspear through the red zone there. Yeah,
also nice. Often Burning-Tree Emissary, the green mana generator kind of goes to waste, so Audacity another way to use that up. All right, and Richard is in the booth, so let's go ahead and bring him in here. Richard, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about you guys?
We're doing all right, man. So that game 1 looked a little rough there, but you sure turned the tables the rest of the match.
Yeah. Game 1 was pretty rough being on the draw.
Yeah. So let's talk about game 2. You weren't able to push any damage through early, and then kind of counterintuitively, the Supreme Verdict opened the door, and you just flooded in after that.
Yeah, when he verdicted, I felt pretty good because I was like, no matter what, I'm Bushwhacker next turn. That's a damage amplifier. So I was pretty happy about the verdict, honestly.
And then game 3, you put on a nice show for us there. That turn 3 kill, adding up to exactly 20. That was quite something.
Yeah, the deck's pretty explosive whenever it goes off.
Yeah. How is a turn 3 win there? Is that something that you think is that something that can happen occasionally, or is that kind of a
fluke? No, definitely.
Yeah, that's something you can reasonably expect to happen.
Turn 1 creature, Burning-Tree Bushwhacker, and then Atarka's Command or another Reckless Bushwhacker can lead to turn 3 kills.
Okay. Well, it looked good there, and he didn't have the Grazer in turn 3, and with no blockers, and you showed him what was up, I guess.
Yeah. So we saw a recent pickup there in Audacity from Brothers War. How has that been performing for you so far?
I actually played a different list than this at the RC and was getting destroyed because I wasn't able to push through damage. I saw the 13th place list, I think, playing it, so I decided to try it out past few weeks online, and it's been really well. Being able to get those last few points of damage in when they have blockers.
Yeah, it looks solid. Now, Lotus Field, a deck that, kind of seems like it's on the rise over the last few weeks or month, but a deck that you'll probably feel somewhat favored against, I would expect.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So how much sideboarding did you do there? We saw the Cinder Vines in game 2. What else were you looking at as far as sideboarding there?
Just brought in the Cinder Vines, and game 2, I cut I think it was a Reckless, or no, it was a Legion Loyalist. That's what it was. It was kind of like, it doesn't do much. Might as well have the Cinder Vines in.
So you think the matchup is solid enough that you're not really worried about looking for additional help out of the sideboard? You're just like, okay, one Cinder Vines, and we'll just basically roll starting 60 over again, and that'll be enough a decent amount of time. So for people that are playing with the deck and wondering what to watch out for, so the Cinder Vines, are you thinking about, is that just a damage source? Are you looking at disrupting by like killing the Omniscience, or is this just, you're primarily thinking it's just a damage source over time?
It's a damage source, because sometimes in that race they can stabilize, or will win with like 2-3 life, and if you have that in playoffs, it makes it a lot harder.
Yeah. Okay, well, Richard Nixon, well on your way. So you, what did you play against round 1?
I played against Phoenix round 1. It was actually really close. Came down to me being able to attack for exactly lethal in game 3.
Okay, so similar to what we just saw, although you might have had more turns coming this time around, but you're just like, oh, well, Krueger, don't worry about calculating your turn 4. You're not going to get one anyway. Well, Richard Nixon, well on your way. 2-0. Good start this morning. Good luck the rest of the day.
Ready. Thank you.
Yeah, we will hopefully see you in the feature match again. This will hopefully not be your last press conference either. We'll try and get some more Atarka on camera. I know it has a big fan base out there.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for talking with us. All right. We are going to continue on our coverage of round 2 by moving into a backup match. So we're going to have Justin Brickman versus Harrison Fang. Let's go ahead and get that going. Blue-white control versus humans. So a little differently paced match than the one we just saw.
Yeah, we often see Justin Brickman behind the scenes in some capacity, whether it's behind the booth or you're helping out with the coverage and so on here. But in the trenches today with Blue-white Yorion, the deck that actually are defending champion from this morning, Derek Davis, used to top 8 the regional championship in Atlanta just a few weeks ago.
All right, so Justin on the board with Jawari Disruption here, and we're going to see a lot of those throughout the day, these double-sided cards that allow you to increase your land count without actually committing to playing lands, and Hopeful Initiate on the board for Harrison Fang. The matchup, ideally, you'd probably hope for a 2-power creature on turn 1 a lot of time, but Hopeful Initiate can get there eventually.
Mono-white Human's a deck that won that DreamHack event in Atlanta and has gained a lot of steam over the past few weeks, seeing a lot of the regular names on the circuit picking that deck up as well.
No, yeah, I mean, Mono Humans has a decent matchup against. Now, in any Pioneer tournament you walk into, the top 3 decks of the field are likely going to be Black-Red Midrange, Mono-Green Devotion, and Arclight Phoenix. And if you're playing mono white here, you're thinking you're probably ahead of green and maybe close to slightly ahead of Arclight Phoenix. So you're looking for edges in a couple of the matchups here. Blue-white control, I mean, Thalia is the big card. That's the big stumbling block for a lot of the spell-based decks in the format, and Thalia is here for Harrison Fang.
Yeah, but when I played the Pioneer event in Fort Wayne a few years ago, mono green was everywhere. By far the most popular deck. And the big incentive to play mono white is that matchup is supposedly very good. We've seen mono green really fall off in the weeks since then, and yet mono white has stuck around. Just a very solid deck on the whole. Your fastest draws can just kind of run over anything, and depending on who you ask, like decent matchup against Rakdos midrange, and I would imagine a decent matchup against the average control deck as well.
All right, we'll see what Harrison Fang is going to get going here. I thought he was Lieutenant, so that's going to boost the offense quite a bit. And his Hopeful Initiative will attack and pick up additional counters, I believe. All right, there we go. So 6 damage comes across, and now Justin Brickman will be looking at Supreme Verdict mana if he's got a land and a verdict. And if he doesn't, I mean, Harrison Fang's sitting there with just 2 land in play, but plenty of offense. But, you know, a Yori on deck.
Yeah, really phenomenal stuff for Harrison Fang. And it's...
Yeah. A Yori on deck, now he's going to have...
You would think...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, they try to compensate for, you're going to have Supreme Verdict a little less often, but there's going to be stuff like Temporary Lockdown, there's going to be other removal spells. Not all of those actually applicable here because Hopeful Initiate with Mana Open is the perfect answer to Lockdown, destroying it in response to the trigger, making sure that nothing gets exiled in the first place.
Yeah, it would have been good for Justin there. It will not be good going forward. And he's at 11, facing down. Let's see, on the board right now, we have 3, 6, 9, 10 damage. Well, that will boost the Thalia's Lieutenant. I believe is that a Brutal Cathar?
That I believe it is, yeah.
That is the minimum required.
And it is day, in case that matters. And now this is Shark Typhoon just to chomp block something and save off some damage here.
Yeah, well, that will work if Justin can find a sweeper. Temporary Lockdown no longer good because the Brutal Cathar will survive it. But Supreme Verdict really looking like the ideal card here for Justin Brickman. Unclear whether he was short the untapped land last turn or whether he's short the Verdict. He's got some absorbs, but I mean, just like in a lot of hyper aggressive matchups, counterspell's not exactly what you're looking for. Yeah, and Harrison Fang will pick up game 1.
Yeah, it turns out when you have aggro decks meeting little resistance, these games end pretty quick. And looking at the sideboards here for both players, Justin doesn't really have that much to speak of. The one Elspeth Suns champion, I think, is the only potentially relevant card, and that's a very kind of end game play there. And even in a Yorion deck, it becomes a lot harder to sideboard when you're going to have more stuff clunking up your main deck and less access to your relevant sideboard cards. That is a very real cost.
Right. And we see in the sideboard a couple Damping Spheres. So this may be a move. The format should move towards more hate for Lotus Field. And perhaps that's what we're seeing here, a couple Damping Spheres. Whereas a month ago, I think it's rather unlikely you would have seen that in the average stock Blue-White control list. But here we have them. Again, something had to go. And potentially it was cards for this mono-white matchup where game 1, I mean, there's a lot of removal in this deck. There's also a fair number of cards that aren't particularly helpful. Narset's not going to do a ton. Absorb's not going to do a ton. Dovin's Veto even less. And yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe Justin doesn't really have the volume of cards to swap in that he would prefer here.
And over on Harrison Fang's side, he's someone who is in the scrum for some of these at-large leaderboards and so on. But he needs a very good tournament here. I think he needs to at least top 8 and potentially make it even further than that too. So after a decent start, up a game at 1-0, hoping to make a run here with the Humans deck. And I think his sideboard has a little more going for it here. So the 4 wedding announcements are a pretty clean spot for Brutal Cathars, and then you can maybe shave copies of stuff like Brave the Elements for more creatures if you want to go that route.
Right. No, that all sounds good to me. Yeah, wedding announcements is a super nice card. Adding to your board presence, putting more cards in your hand, depending on the scenario. Maybe you want... I don't know that you would bring in Destroy Evil just to kill Temporary Lockdown, but I suppose it's an option. If Harrison chooses to go for it. There are other cards that potentially you could want, but likely wedding announcements is the all-star here. Anyway, let's go ahead and see how game 2 plays out. See if Justin Brickman can come back here. Well, ideal way to start the comeback is not on the mulligan, but these 80 card decks do require a good bit of shuffling, trying not to tire yourself out throughout the day. I mean, is that a cost to playing a double-sleeved Yorion deck? Physical fatigue through the afternoon?
It sure is. Well, in Modern, when Yorion was ruling the skies there, you kind of felt obliged to double sleeve your deck, especially if not all of those were your cards. But then that would make it even harder to actually shuffle effectively. And you were shuffling at least once a turn, thanks to Fetch Lands and Ren and Six and so on. Little less of that going on in Pioneer. Luckily, these Yorion decks are a bit more manageable. But hey, I played a Yorion deck for 14 rounds at the RC, and my hands were pretty tired by the end of that.
Yeah, I believe it. All right, Justin Brickman, can we find a capable 6-card hand here? Yes, we can. And we're underway. Hopeful initiative again for Harrison Fang. So again, doesn't push the maximum damage through on turn 2, but got the job done last game, as they did eventually grow to be 3 power attackers. Is there an all-important Thalia?
It looks like there is. Maybe thinking if that's actually the move here, though.
Yeah, so Harrison leads on Luminarch Aspirant. instead. So not wanting to play by the book is he. This does push through more damage this turn. And an Omen in the Sea for Justin. Trying to put that hand, sculpt that hand together, set up the right land drops followed by removal. And then really a lot of these control decks in Pioneer intend on winning just with Planeswalkers. I mean, maybe Yorion shows up once in a while, but really this is a deck. Well, I believe we're maxed out on Planeswalkers in Justin's list. 4 of Teferi Narset and Wandering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 Narset, 4 Emperor. Yeah. So that's 12 total in the deck. And all of those, I mean, Teferi less so, but both Narset and Wandering Emperor actually work pretty nicely with Yorion, where with Emperor, you flicker it comes back on the end step, you can activate it immediately. And then with Narset, you'll often try and get 1 or maybe even 2 impulses out of it, and then you can reset it to go again the following turn.
Right. And it's tough for Harrison Fang to choose to send damage to Narset, which, especially when it's on 1 loyalty and it's not going to do anything else. But sometimes you do need to do that to pick things off. All right, so Thalia's Lieutenant here to increase the damage output.
Justin does have that 1 cheeky copy of Days Undoing in the deck to pair with an asset. So not an angle that you can expect to see, given it's a single turn in 80 cards. But when it comes up, that is a potential game changer. This is really not the matchup for either of those cards, though.
No, it is not. All right, but like you were saying, they might still be in the deck, as there may just not have been enough cards to justify swapping them out. And another Omen in the Sea here. So Justin continues to set things up while eating damage.
Although, if Justin does have a lockdown or Supreme Verdict on this turn, Harrison, decent damage output so far, but something a little bit. This would be a good way to really seize control of the game.
Yes, indeed. So we'll see if Harrison has a post-combat land. It seems somewhat unlikely, but perhaps he is sandbagging it for the turn.
Would you draw a card of that Omen? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. So Justin probably sitting at 12 right now. And a Castle, Ardenvale, comes into play. Can't make a token just yet. Useful for chump blocking later in games, but we're totally ready for that now. And here's a Fateful Absence.
And that has to be a fantastic sign for Harrison. You have to think if there was a sweeper there, definitely would have been deployed and deployed very quickly. So the fact that we're just picking off 1 creature and even giving Harrison a little something back, that's a fantastic sign for him.
Right. And Harrison stumbling on land, unlikely to be able to cash in that clue for probably quite a while. All right, there is land. Some options in hand here for Harrison. There is another Thalia's Lieutenant. There is a Thalia Guardian of Thraben, which is now the choice.
We are hearing, too, that even though we saw Will Krueger getting run over on camera by that mono red deck, the results of the other round do, in fact, lock him now for a spot at the championships early next year. So would love to obviously convert in the tournament today and shrug it off and make a run, but got to be feeling pretty pleased about how things are going.
Yeah, congratulations to him. That didn't take much work. Well, it took a year of work, I guess. It just culminated a few rounds before the end of the season. So
yeah.
To him. So he will making a return appearance. All right, Field of Ruin for Justin.
There are a few routes you can get there, right? Like we saw Derek Davis, won. I don't know how many of these NRG events he's even played, but showed up yesterday, won the whole thing, and he'll be there. Don't have to grind for 6 or 8 months to.
Right. Yeah, he was a contender, but not in prime position on the season 3 leaderboard. But now he doesn't have to worry about that at all anymore. Justin Bricker, meanwhile, needs to find some action here. The first clue is now sacrificed here for Harrison Fang. Finds another land, which is probably what he was hoping for.
I imagine somewhat conscious now of cards like Wandering Emperor, Shark Typhoon. So Choppy Waters in combat potentially. And yeah, we're going to see him trying to make a 3/3 Shark and ambush the Thalia's Lieutenant or the Thalia.
Yeah, either one useful to get rid of.
Also holding up Castle Ardenvale too. So yeah, you don't really expect this combat step to work out the way you want it to, but you can't not attack because there are so many other things it could be. And as the game goes along, that favors the control deck. So just got to send it in and hope for the best. We do have post-combat the Lotus Lieutenant bumping up the other one as well. That second one should not have a counter on itself. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. That playing that Lotus Lieutenant post-combat dramatically impacted Justin's ability to block that turn, as that shark would have actually not traded with either creature if the Lotus Lieutenant was already on the board. But Harrison trying to pace his development here, and now Wandering Emperor comes down.
This is the bind that these control decks put you in. Is you try and play around one thing, and as a result, you end up getting punished by the other thing that open mana could represent. So Harrison, thanks for those clues, somehow still has a full hand of cards here. But the position on the board is getting more and more drastic.
Yeah, okay. Another hopeful initiate. Unlikely to pick off Omen of the Sea, even if there were a plethora of counters in play. But here's an Adeline. This does a great job of pumping up Thali's Lieutenant, as you can pick up more than one counter a turn.
It's going to be a 4/4 now.
Which is enough to get through the shark. So how Harrison chooses to divvy up his attackers here. Looks like Thali's Lieutenant is going at Justin, and the token is blocked, so Wandering Emperor does survive. Justin drops 6. Somewhat comfortable life total.
And the big difference between a white aggro deck and a red aggro deck is you don't have reach in the form of burn or anything like that. So if you stabilize on the board, then you can be on 2 to 3 life and still feel pretty safe here.
Mm-hmm. So this is, I believe, an upkeep sacrifice of Omen of the Sea for Justin Brickman. Scries 2 to the bottom. So
maybe a sign of desperation. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So that shuts off the ability to make a castle token for the turn.
Head in the hand so as well. Maybe just doesn't have much left.
A third Fateful Absence. Okay, going to pick up Adeline.
Maybe a little conscious of something like Breath of the Elements, but luckily Harrison cannot protect Adeline here.
And pump up the shark, which likely staying on defense for quite some time here. The 2 different dice, I guess, differentiating one +1/+1 counter as well as a base 3/3. Not entirely sure how that would end up being relevant, but okay. Harrison here trying to figure out how to proceed, probably in a better position than he expected to be in, given how many turns this game has lasted and the mana Justin has access to. What do you think we'll see here? Are we going to see an attack on Wandering Emperor? Are we going to see Harrison go towards Justin's life total, or maybe split up his attackers? Hopeful initiate with the potential to grow here, but it decides to stay home.
So now a choice of do we just chump with our shark, or do we fall to 1 and be living on the edge?
All right. Well, there is a block, and then Skyclave Apparition to take out Wandering Emperor.
Yeah, so Justin's suddenly left with nothing and really has to come up with a sweeper or some other relevant play this turn.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't sacrifice the Omen, so maybe Farewell on the docket, or Elspeth, or something. Could buy Yorion and cast it, maybe?
Yeah, the mana is available for that. Although,
But then
Why-
we'll just
yeah.
be dead on board. So no,
yeah,
that,
buy Yorion
that's
Casket.
not going to do it.
No, that is not going to work. Farewell would be good. Supreme Verdict isn't. Supreme Verdict would be interesting. Installers Lieutenant could live, but so could Justin would receive a 4/4 token from the Wandering Emperor. Instead, it is another Wandering Emperor.
So we're just about hanging on.
Mm-hmm.
Justin will go up to 8 and then take 6, which was his life total coming into the turn, fall back down to 2. And if there's another lieutenant, or I guess Adeline would put him to 1. So that clue goes away, and now what?
Well, let's see. It's close. The players are straightening out the graveyard for which cards are supposed to be exiled and which are not. Another hopeful initiate in hand. Maybe a recruitment officer. So now, if this is a non-lethal attack, you go and pick off Wandering Emperor, right? I mean, that's worth a point. I would think, actually, it's 2 points, I guess. Maybe it's not. We'll see what Harrison chooses. Oh, okay. Well, there we go. It is another Skyclave apparition to wipe out the Wandering Emperor. Yeah, you don't want to leave it on the board for Yorion to reset. As you were saying, it's kind of cute how Wandering Emperor can come into play during end step and be able to immediately activate. So Justin faced with
Justin, this is a valiant effort in a game where no sweeper has materialized.
Yeah.
So we're having to deal with every single threat one by one. And it's much easier said than done.
Mm-hmm. So upkeep scry.
Both of these to the bottom.
Yeah.
So a big draw step.
Ooh, Dovin's Veto is not going to cut it. And Harrison
Dovin's
Fang.
Veto.
Yeah.
That's not going to do it.
Harrison Fang picks up the win here.
And Dovin's Veto, one of those cards which like you really would want to be able to sideboard out of your deck if possible, I think. And yet just 80 cards, a lot that you want to sideboard out and not many things to replace them with. And that's one of the issues with building your control deck for a format where you have these really fast aggro decks, you have other control decks, you have Rakdos mid-range is maybe the best deck, and then Lotus Field as a big spoiler where, those Damping Spheres in the sideboard, they're for that matchup and that matchup alone. And this is a kind of pairing where you wish there were anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. But Harrison Fang will continue the quest to qualify for the championship. Got some work to do, but it is possible that he can make it in on the overall leaderboard. So we'll be back in a few minutes for round 3 and see how this progresses. We've got 5 slots left to qualify for the end of the championship through this end of this Energy Pioneer 5K. Stick around.